Hi everyone, welcome. Hi Jasmine. Send you an invite to join me now. Hi Chioma. Hi, how are you?
Hey, doing great. Thank you.
Wonderful. We'll just give people a few moments to
hmm
roll in.
Absolutely. I'm going to grab some water
Please
in
do.
preparation for our discussion. Do you want to, while we're waiting for people to join on, I feel like I need to like share this little, like, you know how like something just happens so random and
Mm-hmm.
you're just, okay. So in preparation for jumping on the live with you, obviously open up Instagram and your fingers like automatically do what they do. And so mine automatically go and check my messages.
Mm-hmm.
And I won't say this person's entire username out of
Mm-hmm.
privacy for them, but there was a message with just a red heart. And the person's name was Jermaine Johnson.
Mm.
And it had some numbers after it. So I'll just leave it at that.
Mm-hmm.
But Jermaine Johnson is my older brother's name, who unfortunately lost his life to HIV, his battle with AIDS, and it's so like
Wow.
how the chances of having and entering this discussion just like moments
Yeah.
ago, and you know I'm sure it's just happenstance, but it
Mm-hmm.
was just kind of reaffirming that this is where I'm supposed to be tonight. So
Mm-hmm.
just
Thank
wanted
you
to
so
share
much for
that with you.
sharing that. That's so beautiful. I think you were
Yeah.
definitely supposed to see that.
I
You were
think
definitely
so.
supposed
I
to see
think
that.
so. Yeah.
Wow. Yes, I feel grounded just by hearing that because I definitely
Mm-hmm.
see the purpose
Mm-hmm.
of this conversation as well.
Yeah. Thanks for letting me share that with you.
No problem. So thank you all for joining us. We're about to start this conversation, and we really want it to be an interactive experience. So as we're diving into these topics, feel free to ask questions, and hopefully we'll be able to get to them at the end. But I'm looking at the clock, and I think we should just jump straight in. Yes, I'm really, really, really excited for this conversation. So, welcome everyone to the 7th episode of United We Rise, Every Black Body Live series. My name is Catherine Labiron. I'm the Gender Justice Program Coordinator at the Black Alliance for Just Immigration. I'm also on the planning committee of United We Rise. I'm excited to be your host today for this discussion. And today we'll be discussing sexual liberation and social justice with our very, very, very special guest, Jet Setting Jasmine, who is a licensed clinical psychotherapist, international sex educator, and master fetish trainer. She's also the co-owner of Royal Fetish Films. Thank you so much, Jasmine, for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
And before we jump into all of these really deep questions, I just want to know how you're doing. There's so much going on in the world. Everything's so fast paced. Yeah.
Thank you so much
How
for
are you feeling?
asking. Doing well. All things considered, right? We made it to the other side of this election.
Mm-hmm.
Which means for those of us that are in Black and brown bodies, it means it is our next like level up of more work to do.
Yeah.
So a lot of people are feeling like this relief. We're feeling like, okay, put your boots on. Let's get back to work. COVID, of course, is COVID. And I am in Florida, so we're experiencing a little hurricane right now.
Yeah. For your loved ones, everyone is okay?
Everyone is as well. We're all stocked up. We're all together. So we're good. Thank you,
Okay.
though.
Awesome. Well, thank you for making time for this
Of
conversation.
course.
Loads of juicy questions. I'm just going to jump straight in
Come
so that we
on.
have time. Cool. So the first question I'd like to ask, so I read that you started Jet Setting Jasmine in 2010 after attending a very boring sex party where women were not getting what they needed. So I'm wondering, would you say that it was that event alone that influenced your decision to make your company, or were there other things that influenced your decision?
Well, that was probably my decision to monetize my exploration around sex and sexuality. It was really boring.
Mm.
And, you know, I think it was at that moment, a couple of pivotal things happened at that moment. One was hearing women ask questions that I was thinking like, am I wrong because I don't know this? Am I wrong because I haven't experienced? Am I wrong because I want this, but it doesn't seem to be available? So it was really affirming. And, you know, so there is definitely something to any toy party. It's just like, you know, just being able to have that camaraderie and have like some object to bring us together to talk about something that is oftentimes difficult too. What I did notice is the person who was hosting the party was this person was a white woman, and all of my friends we were all Black or of color, and there were some nuances that I felt like, as a therapist and as a person that is at least open about discussions around sex and sexuality, I was more primed to answer and respond to, and if I was going to give advice about something, it was also going to come from a cultural context.
Yeah.
You know, a lived experience of like being in a Black body and trying to explore sex. Like, it's not that easy.
Yeah.
And so like seeing this, but at the end of that party, as boring and out of touch as it was, like, we were spending our money, you know, oh, that toy is $100 and something. Boom. Like, I'll get that lube. And, you know, doing that impulsive, feel good purchase. Yeah. And I'm like, wait a minute. So she can come here and give us a dry, out of touch presentation about some plastic to stick in our body, and we're gonna spend money in this way. I think I should probably be doing this. And I felt in that moment I was probably more qualified. And here we are 10 years later, like, I am.
Congratulations. I love that you saw that niche right there, that Black people were not being catered to in that way, and that you also felt that you had the ability to do so, because I think so many times, like, we underestimate our capabilities, but you were empowered in that moment.
Absolutely. And seeing how, you know, just seeing our economy, like, we can get subpar service, but because we want to be included, or because we want these experiences, we will pay top dollar for subpar service. And we see that within our spending habits across the board.
Right. No, thank you. I had no idea about that backstory, so I'm really glad that I'm aware of like how you really entered into the work, well, at least the monetization of the work that you do. So I'm thinking about all of the favorite things and the aspects of you that I've seen from afar, and one of the things that I really hold on to is just how fully you appear in the spaces that you're in, that you're not shy about speaking about your role as a master fetish trainer, while you also talk about your role as a mother and as a partner. So I'm just wondering what influenced you, or if there are things or situations that really encouraged you to show up as your whole self in the work that you do.
Yeah, there's so many reasons for that. Part of it is that, you know, we hide things that we're ashamed of. You know, we hide things that we're concerned about what the backlash would be, or that we're uncertain about. And so everything I share, even if I am still trying to figure it out, I feel like it's important for me to share what I am proud of. And I am proud of my exploration around sex and sexuality. I am proud of the countless hours that I have put into researching and learning about how our bodies respond to BDSM and why it is something to explore in terms of kink. I'm proud of being a Black woman director of erotica for people who've been looking to see their bodies represented for, you know, many years in so many different forms of media. I'm proud to be a mom, like, you know, like everything that I do, I've worked really hard at it. I haven't worked hard at it to hide it.
Right.
The other thing too is, like, as a mother, something that has been important to me is breaking generational cycles where our children only know one aspect of us, and then they have to learn the rest of the world through other women's examples, you know? And so it was really important to me, not just to bring my authentic self publicly, but to my children. It's like, this, I'm a woman, and yes, I am your mother, but I am also all of these other things. So when you start thinking about how you want to grow up, you're going to be my daughter, and you're going to be all these other things too, you know? And so giving my children space to grow up and be unashamed of the things that they work hard for and that they're proud of. And so that's why I give it all to y'all. Take it if you want it. Leave what you don't. Leave what doesn't serve you.
Right. No, thank you. We're very grateful for you for doing that because, as you said, it's really this process. We talk so much about intergenerational trauma, but what you're doing is exhibiting intergenerational healing. So it's something that shows and resonates so deeply. And I think that that leads perfectly onto this other question, where I think so many of us wish we learned more about sex and sexuality at a younger age.
Yeah.
So as a parent, can you share about when and how you think, or at least maybe even your personal experience of like teaching your children about sex and sexuality, like how did you maneuver that, and maybe how is it different to how you were raised?
Yeah. So I've made mistakes, you know, across the line. Like my oldest daughter can remember me being like a sex negative parent, like, you know, like don't be letting boys blah, 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 or like, you know, keep your hands where I can see them and things like that. And really the way that I like to coach it is that first voice that I'm usually was approaching my child with then was my mother's voice. It's like I didn't know another script. I was just repeating what was said to me, even though that way of thinking wasn't serving me. It was having me have a lot of cognitive dissonance, a lot of internal conflict. I was thinking one thing and behaving another way, you know? So I always say that first voice is my mother's voice. The second voice is really where I am. So that's me in the second phase of sex positive parenting, going like, okay, so boys are going to approach you and this is how you might want to, you know, and so it's really being a little bit more realistic about what it's like to be a young girl or just a child experiencing puberty. The third voice is who I want to be. And I try really hard to speak in that voice. And when we're talking about breaking generational trauma, we have to somehow access that third voice, you know, and it's a lot of times for me, it's just like actually just taking a pause, not responding and going, I'm going to think about what you just did and I will be back. And then like going into my room and going, okay, but what did my mom say? Yeah, don't do that. Where are you feeling right now? Okay, yeah, don't do that. What do you want this to look like? Okay, boom, try that, right? So that's kind of like the formula that I use with my children. The King and I, when people ask us like, when do you talk to your kids about sex? It's like always. And there really isn't a time that we shouldn't. So I recall, and I'll give an example of this, being at a seminar, at a sex positive parenting seminar, and someone saying, well, I have a 9-month-old. So when you're saying you should always be being a sex positive parent, like what does that look like? And I'm like, have you ever tried to cuddle with a 9-month-old when they don't want to cuddle? Yeah. Like it's non-consensual. They will let you know, right? They will do all of the and like that's an opportunity when we're being sex positive. It's not always about like intercourse and having babies. It's about consent, autonomy of body, articulating your needs, your wants. So when a baby is going like, they're saying no. Yeah. And when we can respect that, even that baby's autonomy, because all we want is cuddles. It's not like, you know, we're like doing some life saving treatment, you know? So when we respect that baby at 9 months old autonomy, we're really setting the stage for what this looks like at 9, what this looks like at 19, what this looks at 39. You know, it's just like, I've always had control of my body. That's how I want my children to be in this world. And if you didn't start at 9 months old, start from where you are. Like, how are you giving your child autonomy of their body? How are you respecting their boundaries? Start there. If talking about sex is too scary, just start there. Yeah. No, thank you. And I think one of the key things I took away is that the fact that you're still learning as well. You know, I think that there's this expectation that like, you know everything. Like you just got it perfect. That's the minute that you make a mistake. And I have like 3 very different children for a number of different reasons. So their education and their approach is going to be different with each one. And then also like we're talking about generational differences. So like, you know, my second daughter saying like, I don't identify as, you know, X, Y, and Z, this, I identify as a toaster, and me going like, okay, like this is a thing now. Okay. Change our language, you know, and how do I respect this? So yeah, always learning. Anyone who's told you that they have arrived is still on their way. Yes. That is a quote. That's a t-shirt right there. That should be on a t-shirt. Thank you. So to transition into another category or another conversation, sure. You know, I've been thinking so much about just 2020 and the toll that it's taken on us in so many different ways. And I've particularly had on my heart just how
negatively the pandemic has impacted the sex work industry.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if you can share just a little bit about how the pandemic, this public health crisis, has impacted the work that you do.
So I think the public health crisis it's definitely having a huge impact on performers in a number of ways. Like our economy as sex workers is very much based on the economy of our of our country or our nation, or heck, for our world. Many of us are international providers, whether it's through cam modeling or live sex work, whatever it is. Sex is definitely one of those things that will always sell, but at what level, right? When we have to make strong decisions of like, am I going to stock up on toilet paper or am I going to stock up on porn? I hope that my consumers are doing the right thing for their family. But at the same token, I have to be cognizant of that. If I'm making these tough choices for my family, my consumers are also doing the same thing. So, I think it is important whenever we see a change in our economy that we do need to think about our sex workers, our service providers, and how it's going to have an impact on them. Sex work always takes its risk, whether that is, physical bodily risk or work through the fact that, it's like not legal in many places and spaces, right? So there's always some risk that's involved, honestly, with any job, but definitely as a sex worker. That being said, not being able to work, like I can't have live clients right now to do even like just BDSM sessions and fetish sessions without compromising my health, the health of my client, and potentially the health of my family. So sex workers are either, are straddling the fence with, do I do the work that I have to do to survive and take this risk, or do I hunker down and do something else or change my work? One of the things that I love about sex workers and people of color, and I do spend a lot of time with sex workers of color, especially in our BIPOC collective, is that we are like so creative and innovative and resilient, so like just seeing King and I, we've been shooting socially distanced BDSM shoots. We've been learning how to direct virtually, how to perform virtually, how to take those in-person sessions and have them just like you and I are doing right here. So the creativity is definitely there. One of the things that I do want to point out that is a really hardcore change that I think our listeners, whether they are sex workers or they are just legal voters or are engaged in politics, is think about sex workers when you're sitting down at the table making kind of like legal decisions. Because this time around with COVID, sex workers were not allowed to apply for small business loans. We were not allowed to apply for resources. We are allowed to pay taxes though.
Of course.
We are expected to participate in this society just like every other tax-paying professional that has a small business. However, we were not, because and it has like a line about like our moral, I can't think, like the morality of our work. But who's to suggest that what's moral and immoral for something that is legal? It's legal enough for you to tax, but not legal enough for you to support in a global pandemic. So I think that's something that we don't really consider. We are small business owners, but we're not privy to the benefits of a small business owner in crisis.
Yeah. Whew. There's so much that needs to be changed. There's so much. So like just even thinking about the work that you do and the shifts that you've made, you explained that a lot of the work that you do that you would typically have it in person, but now you're shifting to this more virtual reality. I'm just wondering, like, how have your clients been responding to that?
They've been responding really, really thoughtfully. What I have found is that a lot of people naturally jump to live sex work when they really could use like 3 steps before that: exploring what it is, having a conversation about it, learning how to communicate, building some boundaries, trying things that are not like up in your face. So what I am finding is that people are pacing themselves with learning. People are actually taking what I think are more appropriate steps to entering a particular lifestyle or trying something. I do also think that people are learning how this type of interaction will translate much better to the way that we are the way that we date people right now. So, you know, like doing a session with me and introducing kink and BDSM in a virtual way is actually going to help you pace yourself in a real life scenario where you're probably going to meet somebody on, like, you know, Instagram or something.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
No, thank you for sharing that. And so I'm thinking about just the amount of racism, you know, I think we've been touching on it so far. And, you know, as a Black woman in the sex work industry, I'm just wondering if there are things that you've seen throughout your career that you think should be changed in order to actually make the sex work industry a lot more safer for Black women specifically.
So funny you asked, because I literally have pages of things that should change.
Amazing.
I won't go through all of them. I actually point the listeners to where they can see that. This is actually a document of demands of the adult industry that was pulled together by BIPOC AIC. So it stands for Black Indigenous People of Color Adult Industry Collective. It's a collective that was founded by Cinnamon Love, a 26-year veteran in the sex industry, and 27 other performers of color and many others in our community got together and talked about the way that the industry blatantly disrespects people of color. Everything from, oh gosh, I think of something that might seem like a minor thing, but it is a big aggression when you sort of think about your body as a commodity. We learned that when, let's just say I go to shoot a scene today, and they usually say, you know, be hair and makeup ready, right? Or we'll go and there's a makeup artist and they're going like, hey, do you have your foundation with you? Because I don't think I have a foundation that matches. Right, exactly. You know exactly what that is like. And then learning from our white counterparts that hair and makeup is oftentimes built into their contract. In terms, like, and you know what it's like to get a good weave or a good wig or some good eyelashes. That shit is not cheap, right?
It really isn't.
It really isn't. So when you're thinking like already there's a pay differential between Black and white performers, and that's one of the larger things that are on that demand list, for example. But then we're also having to take out of the money we haven't even made yet to appear like well put together without the help of this, you know, production company. So that's one. Something that's a little bit more on the extreme ends of things would be the pay differential, of course, and then things like how we're marketed as a fetishized people, instead of, like, you know, so you might see a porn with, you know, all white people, and it'll say something like, you know, amazing gangbang, right? And then you see like the same exact scene, same number of people shot by the same thing, and it'll be like black thugs, you know, like, can't stop fucking, you know, whatever.
The wildest titles.
It's so wild. And those perpetuate negative stereotypes that don't just hurt us in the porn industry. How do you think that, like, white person at work who says things to you like, yeah, I bet you would like a strong thug or something. Like, they don't get that out of thin air. They get it from their entertainment and their education about our bodies, which is perpetuated by porn. It's $1 billion industry. They're watching and they're learning from it.
Wow. And so now that you are the co-owner of Royal Fetish Films, like, how are you shifting that? Because now you're in this position of power to really like rethink things.
Well, one of the key things about Royal Fetish Films is that we allow people to show up as they are, right? So for using an example, you know, not every time, let me be fair. There are many times when I am requested to shoot outside of my company, and they're like, oh, like, you'll start with some twerking, and like, have you ever known me to be like, I mean, no, that's not, I'm not known for that. That isn't my strong point. You're coming at this from a stereotype perspective. With our company, it's like we sit down and we're talking to the performer and we're creating a scene around that performer. So for other performers of color or not of color, just to have autonomy of how they want to express themselves sexually is huge. How do you want your body to be referred to? What are your pronouns? What words are completely off base that we should not be using post editing, or sorry, you know, like post shoot? everything from the lighting, how our bodies are lit. Like, I am like the coconut oil queen on a set. Like, there will be no ashy asses on Royal Fetish Films. Like,
Yeah.
I am looking for those things that are important and nuanced to people of color, that oftentimes get overlooked because of lack of care, lack of knowledge. I've lost you
Sorry
for a
about
moment.
that.
That's okay. I think we're back. Cool.
Down. Please continue.
So my last point was allowing people to ultimately allowing people to represent themselves in our films and creating a safe and equitable workplace.
Yeah, I think that definitely resonates, and it really shows in the kinds of films that you produce. So thank you. I really feel like there's a huge narrative shift that's happening, and that you are very much responsible for a lot of the shift that we're seeing in the sex work industry. So thank
you. Oh, wow. Thank you for acknowledging.
So I work at the Black Alliance for Just Immigration, and a lot of the work I do is solely in the social justice space. And, you know, when we're dealing with violence against Black bodies, a lot of the work is deeply traumatic. So I'm wondering if you can speak to the role that you think that pleasure has for liberation. You know, 2020 has been this huge year for movement. We've had these national uprisings. People have really like taken to the streets to demand that Black lives matter, even though we know that already.
Right.
But then I think for a lot of activists and people on the front lines, there's been this forgetting of what pleasure looks like or what rest looks like, because we're so eager to get to liberation. So I'm wondering if you could just take a moment to speak to like, why is it that we continuously have to center pleasure?
Yeah, I'm getting kind of like chills when you're saying, when you say that, because even in the beginning of this, when you asked me how I was like, you know, our counterparts are afforded after this election are like, oh, right. You know, like, okay, we can carry on and get back to normal. And for me, it's like, no, because that shit before wasn't normal either.
It was not.
So, you know, so there is no, it's just kind of like, here we go, you know. And so, you know, I kind of got chills at you saying like centering and how important it is to center pleasure, because of that real life example of how we don't even get that exhale. One of the things that comes to mind, especially when working with my therapeutic clients that, you know, that are working through how to get this healing, this liberation, this self-care, when you are literally under attack, you know, 24/7, even like posting a picture on Instagram, knowing that you're going to get flagged or deleted and your white counterpart isn't, you're constantly under attack. I like to liken it to the oppressor does not want us well. Any system that is oppressing you, whether it is the legal system, the justice system, racial injustice, social, like the medical system, healthcare, wherever we are meeting oppression, we have to understand that that system does not want us well, because you cannot fight a good fight if you are not well. You know, you cannot show up for yourself if you are under your emotional stress, your physical stress, financial stressors, all of these things. And so part of our protest has to be taking care of ourselves. And, you know, it is really fighting yourself and going, you know, for me, it's kind of like, oh, I need to answer these people's, you know, like I need to answer this email. These people need me. And then going like, wait a minute. You need you in order, like the oppressor wants you to work 24/7 until you break and you can't work anymore. Self says, take a minute, you'll be better for it. You know, when you can. So self-care for us is very different because there's so much that is on our shoulders. It is rare that we see ourselves as an independent. Community and collective is incredibly a part of our makeup, our genetic makeup. So we do have to kind of, if you can look at it from that perspective, is that your wellness is part of your protest. So creating spaces to be well are really important.
And I'm wondering, you know, you work in many different roles, one of them being a therapist. So how do you take care of your mental health, especially like given that topic that we're just discussing as a Black woman in this country at this time? Like, what are you doing?
Seeing my therapist. Seeing another Black woman. You know, that's huge. Two is being a part, like honoring that commitment to the collective, to community, knowing that there is something that is one that we can actually move many of these issues forward together. And like leaning on community is also just it's fulfilling. That part is super important. So that, and then also I've been very fortunate, thank goodness, for like the last couple of months to take a week off a month. And when I say a week off, I'm not just like, unfortunately, not like laying up and binging on a show or like things like that. A week off of like seeing clients in this way, doing like admin stuff or washing clothes or like some things that you need, right? Going through bills and making sure that they're paid, things like that. So I have committed to that time away from taking on emotional labor and providing emotional service. So that has been really helpful.
No, that's wonderful. I'm so glad that you've been able to like carve that chunk of time out for yourself. I'm really happy to hear that. So following on from this like wider topic of like traumatic experiences that Black people have gone through in this country, I'm wondering if you can talk about just the role that sexual liberation and healing has after people experience traumatic interpersonal relationships. This is a topic that's very dear to my heart. And I'm wondering if you can show or explain what the unique role that kink specifically can play in healing for people.
Yeah, so I know of course we're limited in time, but I just want to share with folks that we do offer training and classes on utilizing BDSM and kink. We call it trauma, drama, and kink. So the utilization of kink towards supplementing the healing with trauma. I think that's important, that kink play, BDSM, any of the things that sex acts can be used as a supplement to your healing. I definitely think like talk therapy, resources and things like that are incredibly important. We can't just lean on one source. I think something that you said in terms of interpersonal is really important. A lot of times we think of traumatic experiences only having an impact on how we show up sexually. I like to broaden that and talk about how we show up intimately. Because getting like sex is sometimes, for someone with trauma, sex is the easy part. That's just the like, let my body experience whatever someone wants to experience with my body, right? But it's not really addressing the need for emotional safety, psychological safety, and that intimacy. So I really do, want people to broaden up the thought around sex to intimacy and our interpersonal, meaningful connections with folks, even if it's for a short time. Like I feel very intimate in the conversation that we're having right now. I do think that kink and BDSM plays, I do know and have experience where it has played a huge role because there's so much value. Am I there?
You're here.
Okay, cool. There is incredible value in communication around our boundaries, our limits, our wants and not wants. And oftentimes these things are assumed in like regular sex. It's like, boy meets girl, girl does her hair like this, boy thinks she's flirting, it's like very scripted to like a romantic comedy. But when we talk about like entering the lifestyle or a session around BDSM and kink, it's talking about like, but what do you like? How do you like to be touched? If you don't like to be touched that way, how do you communicate that? And so giving people and almost like forcing their voice to show up, like you can't have this pleasure unless you communicate, unless you share what your boundaries are. And then also like the trusting nature of kink. And I'm not saying that everyone in the kink community can be trusted, like that's not what I'm saying. Definitely screen. But if it is being, if it is being introduced properly, there should be we should be forming trusting relationships so that I know if I start to feel uncomfortable, triggered, or too much pain or too much whatever, too much of anything or too little of anything, I have a way of communicating and I can trust you to stop. And that I think is where we start to develop this, like, I can trust again. It was a person that did something traumatic to me. I am not a trauma center.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
Right? Because that's what it feels. that's
I'm
what it
listening. I'm
feels
taking my
like.
notes.
Yeah, I am not a trauma center. Yes, trauma took place here, but it doesn't, you know, it doesn't have to live here, and it doesn't have to be a repetitive thing. And you know, even people who have experienced multiple traumas start to sometimes feel like it must be me. And so being able to have those experiences where you're like, oh, it isn't me. It was that person, those people, that time, and that environment that harmed me, not my ability to feel safe. You know, so in kink and BDSM, there's just a lot of ability to communicate those boundaries and to establish trust that can sometimes be really hard to do in like more or less vanilla relationships.
Thank you so much for sharing. And I think your answer speaks to just the importance, as you said, of like talk therapy and just communication as well as kink. Because as you're talking, I'm just thinking about the effect of gaslighting and how people have been made to question their voice and their sanity. Like, you know, am I right or am I wrong? And just really rewiring and thinking through things so that you're able to separate what's happened to you from who you are and what you're capable of
now. Oh yeah, absolutely. It's been really life affirming to me. You know, it's just been really, really amazing to see how we can be so creative in the world of therapy as well as in the world of sex. I've been doing a lot of work with training budding sex therapists and just therapists in general of how to use sex work, how to use kink, how to use all of these tools that are available with their clients that have experienced trauma, to be able to live and act out some of these things that we do in our therapy office.
Yeah, no, that's so wonderful to hear that that's happening and that you're able to facilitate that kind of healing for your clients. And I think, you know, there's so many people who are probably wondering like how they can make an entry point into kink and BDSM. They're like, I think I'm kind of interested in this stuff, but I have no idea what the resources are. Like, where's the community? So I'm wondering if you could speak to like how you maybe maneuvered entering into the BDSM kink world, or if there are like resources that are available that you could share with others.
Yeah, well, thankfully, you know, things are different than they were some 10 years ago when I was entering. I mean, King was really incredibly instrumental in my journey. It's like finding a safe partner to explore these things with. You know, we were actually working together before we became a romantic partner, but we were still like, so he would be kind of like my trusted friend to like go in a dungeon with or go in a swingers club with.
I didn't know that. That's awesome.
So, you know, finding someone that you can kind of see their sexual expression or their sexual experience or their kink experience, to be like, like that looks really interesting. I would like to try more of that. And reaching out, you know, everybody in the kink community has sort of had like a kink partner or like that person to kind of like, you know, help introduce them. It really is just like kind of finding a nice little match. A lot of people come to me because I'm a Black mom. You know, and they're like, how do you do this and still like, and so like finding representation of self. And then, you know, checking out where people hang out. Like many of us that are professionals in the community, we're always doing, you know, whether it's, well, now it's like webinars, right? Lots of webinars. And those are where you find your community. It might be something that's like an educational thing, but guess what? Other people in the audience are there in the same boat as you, interested, curious, and open to learning. So I just kind of say, like, just like anything else, like if you're a music head, like find your partner in the place where they play music. If you are like a, you know, like a sapiosexual, like you probably don't want to meet your partner at the club. I mean, you might strike out for sure. I'm not saying that like intelligent people don't hang out at clubs. However, if you want to like strike big, go to places that you like to hang out. So, you know, the same thing with kink. I remember watching a porn clip and there was a dominatrix and she did some like wild shit. And I was like, oh my God, I need to know more about that. And so like I found her name, I found her social media, and then I just started to like become a part of that community based on what was happening.
Wow. Okay. Inspirational. I hope everyone's taking their tips from that. I've definitely taken some myself.
And
please feel free to drop some questions in the comment box. We'll be getting to questions in about 5 minutes. And we're really excited to see the kinds of questions you have for Jasmine before we close in about 20 minutes. So I'm going to shift to talk a bit about HIV, given that, United We Rise, we are mobilizing our communities to really try and end this HIV epidemic in Black communities. So we noticed that many people weaponize HIV and other STDs to reinforce the belief that abstinence is the answer. So how can we push back against that narrative and show that people who are HIV positive can also be sexually liberated?
Oh my goodness. Yeah, there's so many ways. A lot of the work that I do around intimacy and chronic illness, I think it's really one of the key things that I think is a lot of ignorance that is pushed down by leaders in healthcare, leaders in sex education and education. It's kind of that old narrative that they use for sex education, abstinence, right? And it's okay, yeah, nobody's abstaining, but you are keeping at the same narrative. I think what is really important is for organizations, companies, what have you, leaders in the field to really model what does pleasure with HIV look like. The same way that we have to model everything else for every especially marginalized community. It is that showing someone out there doing it. I would love to see more uplifting performers. We have a community of performers that are HIV positive that perform, openly. And why are we not exalting that this is possible? What is the conversation like between performers that are positive and not positive? What does disclosure look like? Can we have a couple talk about what their disclosure story was like? There's so many other things that we can be focused on, especially knowing that the thing that we're focused on is not working, it's not happening. I was doing a talk recently about being, again, being a sex therapist for people with chronic illness, and specifically had a speaker. Her name is Tiffany Marrero, that was born with HIV. And I love the fact that she was telling them, look, we know to take our meds. We know how, we know our viral, we know way more about HIV and AIDS than you ever will, not living with the disease. I'm just trying to figure out how you guys can put on the flyer that positive folks are welcome to your BDSM dungeon party. I'm looking for someone to reach out to me and say, I would like to host a kink party that is positive friendly. So people from people from the HIV/AIDS community can come and have pleasure. And if people from outside the community want to join, sure, they can. And so I'm thinking, ding, 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 ding. We're always, looking at these small niches of ways to create kink friendly community. We've actually missed a large part of our community in welcoming folks that are positive. When I say positive, I want to even broaden that up to positive for any and everything. Are we giving people a safe space to disclose and letting them know that they're welcome, and leaving that responsibility to the 2 parties or 3 parties or 10, whatever you're into, that are engaging, to be responsible with disclosure. That's the other thing too, is it's so much of the weight and the consequence is on the person that's living with the illness, and not on the general public to protect themselves as well, and or protect that person. I have an amazing client that's when we're talking about disclosure, she was like, when I disclose, I let the person know, there's a chance that you can get me sick, and I have worked really hard to be undetectable. So I need you to disclose to me what you're working with. And I was like,
okay, energy. We love it.
How to put it on the other person, but again, this is the kind of modeling that we need to do from professional spaces, instead of that age-old abstinence that not even our non-positive, teenagers that are getting this education are using. But anyways, I feel like I'm talking to the choir, but at the same time, I'm sure there are people that are in there that are like,
you're preaching, and we are all listening to the good word. It is setting into our brains, and we are very grateful. So please do not stop. I'm going to pause to see if there are any questions.
Yes.
So please feel free to drop your questions in. I'm going to scroll back.
Okay.
I've been so deeply engaged in communicating.
Absolutely.
To see if I've missed anything.
Oh, I'm loving the comments. Oh, thank you. That's awesome.
And don't be shy if you have a question. This is now's the time.
Now's the time. Because after that, you'll have to book a one-on-one consultation.
I know, right?
Thank you for sending love. Thank you, Nikia.
Okay. Well, I will just continue then with some questions of my own, and we'll see if anyone pops in with one. So can you speak to just maybe a bit more about your journey into like how you like kind of, you know, made this transition into like becoming more sexually positive within your own life? Because I think we've spoken so much about your career, but I just want to know more about you as Jasmine, like maybe teenage Jasmine, or like, you know, like how are you navigating just like your feelings, and your relationships, and, you know, I think so much of our conversation has been geared towards like the professional side. So
I appreciate.
I wouldn't want to just end without getting to know you.
So I think that my story is very, very similar to many others. And I was raised in a sexually conservative household. My mother is Catholic, Filipino, first generation American. You know, it's like lots of respectability politics about how a woman is supposed to carry herself, those kind of things. A lot of traumatic experiences, sexual traumatic experience in our family has generally been swept under the rug. And, you know, there hasn't been a lot of space, if any at all, for censoring pleasure, censoring privacy, censoring individuality, you know. So I think many of us in one way, shape, or form can relate to that. Just to kind of give you even a little context, funny context, I remember being like maybe 7 or 8. I got to look at when the song came out, but singing Rick James' Super Freak. And I was like, she's a super freak. And I got popped in the mouth.
And you felt it in your spirit.
Young Jasmine. I got popped in the mouth. Like, and I'm like, you're playing the song. I don't even know what a freak is.
Right.
Well, you know, at least I thought I didn't.
Your spirit did.
Right. So, you know, that was my background. It was incredibly repressed, you know, and so I found myself doing, you know, just being rebellious, not caring about the abstinence thing, you know, and certainly working through my own trauma of let me be promiscuous before you before you pounce on me, like I'll take control here. And I think that's where a lot of my dominatrix traits fall into my own sex and sexuality. It is about having some, you know, control and scripting what feels safe and comfortable for me. So again, here we see kink in my own healing, right? But even as a young girl, I was definitely interested in like getting boys to like almost get the cookies and almost get close, and then I would reject them. I love the idea of blue balls and like them like craving. Like I love that so much. It was totally non-consensual. I had no idea what edging was. I had no idea what safe words were. But that kind of was all, you know, it's been in my psyche. And I think sometimes I get like in my head, like what part of this is trauma? What part of this would have developed differently? And then there's the other part of me that goes, doesn't matter. Like, you know what you like, you know what makes you feel safe, you know what you enjoy, and you've kind of found a sexual repertoire that matches who you are. All experiences considered. So I hope for people that are listening and trying to go like, but maybe no, it is what it is. And I am able to find my pleasure in the way that I do now, and taking some of those younger experiences and like actually contextualizing them, like, oh, you like to be in charge, you know, or oh, you like to see men squirm. So that, and then I found the other kind of like big header for me was after having children, I sort of took on the like dress differently, speak differently, have interests in things that like moms have interest in. And then at some point I was just like, I don't even like this person. I don't even like women like this. Like no offense, but like I don't wear clothes, like they don't even look right on my body. You know, and I realized I was trying to wear a persona that was assigned to me by society. It didn't fit. It was uncomfortable. It was stunting. It was unbecoming. And the minute that I chose that I was going to just do what I wanted to do, like really that was it. Like if you go back to like hashtags of like from 2009, it'll say, I do what I want. That was like my mantra into becoming Jet Setting Jasmine. And so I decided to do what I want. And like doing what you want doesn't mean that you're not going to take care of your family. It doesn't mean that you're going to like get arrested and do illegal things. It just like, I still have a moral compass for myself. I have values, I have priorities, but I do prioritize doing what I would like to do. And so that's how I started to center pleasure, because if you could start with like, I don't want to wear my hair like this, then later you'll be able to say like, I want you to lick me like this, or like not like that, right?
No, thank you. I'm going to start thinking like, as I'm making decisions, like hashtag I do what I want.
Do what you want. Do what you want. And you know you don't want to go to jail, so you're not going to do things that are going to cause that, right? You know that you don't want to end up in X, Y, and Z. So but that doesn't mean you have to do it the way that, like the template. People give you templates. Society gives you templates. We should actually be designing those templates to be like us, not be the template.
Exactly. Okay, wonderful. I see that we have quite a few questions, so we're going to do some like quick fire rounds. Okay, how do you overcome shame as a Black woman?
Yeah, you know, there's nothing to be ashamed about. Like anything, I think a part of it is like the thing when you start. For me, when I start thinking, like having that moment of like, oh my gosh, am I going to really do that? It's like, who put that in your head that you can't? Who put that in your mind that that's ugly, or that's not beautiful? You know, that's not okay. 9 times out of 10 is someone you don't even respect or know. You know, so the things like just say porn, for example. Oh my gosh, you're going to do porn, which, you know, the first thing is like, you should be ashamed of yourself. Okay, who's saying that? Oh, the same people who are buying and watching it. I'd rather take their money than take their opinion, you know, or, oh, somebody from church. You mean the church that I don't attend and hasn't checked on me and my children to see if we ate? They should be ashamed. I should be okay. You know, so giving that shame back to whoever gave it to you is how I keep myself shame free. And I don't belong to me. That belongs to someone else.
Yeah. Thank you. I'm smiling because I'm receiving everything that you're saying.
You're like, I'm giving that back. I'm giving that back. I'm doing what I want.
Giving it all back. It'll make you so much lighter in your journey. So someone's asking for BIPOC recommendations. I think it's like maybe websites to explore kink and BDSM. Do you have any?
Yes, I will put it right now into, I'm going to put the BIPOC Collective into the chat. So you guys can check that out later, but you can also find all this information on my Instagram page. And feel free to message if there's something in particular, a resource that I need to point you to. I'll be happy to do that.
Great. And similarly, someone's asking for IG accounts that you would recommend for people who are interested in learning more about kink. Well, I definitely recommend your Instagram account.
Yeah, you know, if you start with me and work your way out, you know, if the things that I'm sharing are resonating with you, I kind of keep myself in similar company, right? So you'll maybe start seeing some of the people that I've collaborated with, take a look at the people that I follow. I tend not to be prescriptive when giving recommendations, because what is hot and kinky and like makes me feel good might be different for you. And sometimes when you point someone in a particular direction and they are like more this way, I don't want you to think that you're wrong. There's probably good stuff over there too. But maybe just start with Jet Setting Jasmine, Royal Fetish Radio, and like work your way out.
Awesome. And someone's asking maybe for you to go a bit deeper on like what you did differently in terms of sex educating children in comparison to how your parents introduced sex to you?
I talked about it. I used the word. I used anatomically correct words, right? So, you know, I was raised using like Filipino nicknames for things, you know, your peck peck and this and that. And it's like, no, it's just my butt, right? It's just my vagina. It's just, you know, it has a functional purpose, and it has a pleasure purpose, which is also functional, right? Things like not shaming my children for their body or how they touch their body or what they do with their body. You know, I was told like, oh my God, that's disgusting. Don't touch down there. It's like, no part of your body is disgusting, and you touch it first before anybody else touches it, you know. Make sure it works and play with all the buttons and stuff. You know, you're not going to break it. There's that. There is using material that is crossing, like, okay, like Super Freak, that song, instead of being slapped and shamed for really just memorizing a song, it really can be a conversation that said, you know, that word freak is for big people to use, or until you know what the definition of a freak is, or any word, you shouldn't use it, little girl, you know. So that's kind of the language. Like with my kids now, we'll be listening to a song, right? So let's just say WAP, like that's like the song of the summer of the century. And like they know what I do, right? But I'll put on like my silly voice and I'm like, well, what do they think of a dry ass pussy, you know? And they'll be like, Mom, and I'm like, no, like really, let's talk about it. Like there's like, you know, like, do they talk about lube, you know, are they and you know, and they'll like be laughing about it, but I'm just like kind of posing a, hey, there's other ways to look at this. I'm here to talk about it if you would like to. I know I'm being silly right now, but I just want to let you know, like, the door is open to have any conversation. Right. So a lot of times we could just use the media that is right in front of us. I used to, when I was a kid, they used to make me cover my eyes. Like, why? You as an adult should either turn it off, or you should be willing to explain it to me and help me contextualize it. But again, this is that top down. We punish you know, children, marginalized people who have seemingly less power, instead of uplifting, teaching, educating, and also us coming to their level and meeting them where they are.
Thank you so much. And I can see that someone also wants us to do another deep dive into this relationship between sex and religion. I think it's kind of going again on that topic of shame and you know what these religious institutions have like done to people in exploring their bodies.
You know, religion changes, and I think that's important for us to understand that. You know, I really do believe that we have to be really mindful, like what, you know, in terms of religion, what do we value? What aspects of it do we value? What makes that religion for us whole? What, you know, what uplifts us about it? What of it is man-made that doesn't hold any weight for you? I think how we experience our religion and our spirituality is very personal, and if we actually approach it from a personal level, we're going to get some personal responses back from whatever our higher power or being is, if that's it. The other part about religion is, like, I was raised Catholic, so you know, I don't know. I don't really label myself as lesbian or queer or bisexual or what have you, because you know, I'm just like in this thing doing what feels good. That being said, if I was holding myself to my religion up until this year, last month, I would have thought that I was some tarnation to the Catholic Church. But now here's this Pope who has changed our attitude on it. So I'm not going to wait for any organization to catch up with what feels right for me. I'm not going to wait for any organization to accept me. I'm going to go ahead and take whatever that religion or organization is and take the tenets that allow me to be the best version of me. And if it catches up, it catches up. If not, like, I still got to deal with myself.
Yeah, I think one of the big messages I'm taking from all that you shared is, like, take what's useful for you and, like, let the harmful things and, you know, let all of that, the rest of the riffraff, let it go elsewhere.
Let it go.
Give back the shame. Give back the shame. Well, Jasmine, I am so grateful that we were able to have this conversation. Like, honestly, like, my heart feels radiant. Like, I feel like you've just given us so much knowledge, so much of your experience. You've been so vulnerable with us, even at the beginning of this conversation, just sharing that anecdote about your brother who has passed. I feel like this conversation has deeper meaning that I'm probably even able to conceptualize right now. So
I'm gonna be all tears in like 5, 4.
I know, I'm honestly so grateful. Like, especially, you know, like, I think 2020 just showed us how fragile everything is. So anytime I'm able to have this kind of conversation with anyone, especially a Black woman, I want you to know how much we value you. You know, I know the work you do is not easy, and you're doing like life-saving work by allowing people to really reconnect with themselves in this time. Thank you. To all of our audience, we also deeply appreciate you. I know some of you still have some burning questions. Please connect with Jasmine. Please connect with us. We are at Every Black Body on IG, Twitter, YouTube, and also you can find us at www.everyblackbody.org. My name is Catherine Labiron. It's been such a pleasure. Have a beautiful evening, everyone.
Good night.
All right. Bye.